Hello everybody, welcome to week 2 material. We are starting off within the Unity Hub. This is the installer and project organizer for Unity. When you actually download Unity, you're specifically actually downloading Unity Hub itself, not Unity. Through Unity Hub, you will download your version of Unity if you haven't already. As you can see, you have total control over the list of projects that you can open up from the Unity Hub, as well as which version of Unity you want to open up. If you go to installs and go to install editor, we can go ahead and see the versions of Unity that are available for installation, as well as pre-releases for future versions, and an archive of older versions of Unity that we can install at our leisure. So we have total control over which version of Unity we open up and which specific project we're going to be opening up. So in the spirit of that, let's go ahead and actually create our project here. Before we do that, though, you want to take note of this add feature. If you don't see your project on this list for whatever reason, because you're transferring it over from another computer or whatever, you can just press add project from disk, and you will be able to track down your particular project and put it on your Unity Hub list here. But since we don't have a specific project we want to work with yet, let's go ahead and actually create a new project. So here we have a list of project templates that we can use. We're going to be sticking with the 3D Core template. Make sure for your homework assignment that you're using the correct version of Unity. That way you can access the microgames, specifically the Lego microgame. If you don't actually see it, it's because you might have the wrong version of Unity installed. So make sure you have the right version of Unity installed, and you should see the microgame. But for our purposes, we're going to go up to this version, and we are going to just select the basic 3D Core template, which is a nice blank scene that we can use for, lecture purposes. So let's go ahead and set up a location for our project. Let's go to desktop. Let's find a folder I created called lecture project. We'll select that folder. And in there, we will create a new master folder called lecture scene. Lecture scene. And now we will go ahead and create our project. As our project is being created, you're going to want to take note of the careful naming and location that I picked for this project. When you create your own Unity project, you want to absolutely make sure you know what it's called and where it's located. And after you create it, you don't want to be moving it around too much, or it is going to mess up things inside your project itself. So make sure you ironclad pick a location, ironclad pick a name, and stick with that when you create a Unity project. Second of all, you'll notice, with the magic of editing, it's not going to take that long for us to actually see the Unity scene. As soon as I'm done talking, we're going to be seeing the Unity scene. But it may take you a few minutes the very first time you load up a Unity scene for the scene to actually open. Don't worry if that happens, because if that happens, it's just Unity doing its regular loading shtick. After you load something for the first time and close it and load it up again, it's going to load a lot faster. So first time something loads, it's going to probably take a few minutes. Second time onwards, it's going to be a lot faster. But let's go ahead and actually get into Unity itself now. Welcome to Unity proper. If you've never opened up Unity before, don't worry. This class is for people who are both somewhat familiar with Unity and for people who have never opened up Unity in their lives. So welcome if this is your first time to Unity. Let's go over the basic layout and start navigating this space properly. So Unity is comprised of 4 basic panels. We have the scene panel here, we have the hierarchy panel, we have the inspector panel, and we have the project panel. Let's go over them one at a time. Scene panel essentially operates as the game engine viewport. This is where you will physically be able to see all the things that you place in your scene. At this point, we only have 2 things, basic light and a camera, so not much to talk about, but as we add in more objects and you bring in more objects from other programs, you can start seeing this populate into, your own vision. Moving away from scene, let's go over the hierarchy panel here. Hierarchy operates similar to the outliner in Maya, in that it will physically list out all of the things that are in your scene panel. We can make, just like in Maya, we can make things parents and children. We can group things together. Right now, this is not that interesting because we only have 2 things in our scene, the camera and the light. But as we start populating with more things, you will see the hierarchy. You will see the hierarchy start to fill up with more and more you start to see it fill up as a longer and longer list. So for now, not much to write home about, but this will become more important as we move forward, of course. Next up, we have the inspector. The inspector essentially acts as the settings for anything and everything you can imagine inside of Unity. So this light that we have here, if we select it, you will see the inspector now populate with a whole bunch of basic information about that light. It's transform information where it physically is in the space, as well as other basic information like the type of light it is, its color, its intensity, its shadows that it's generating. If we select the camera, we get a whole bunch of different information, as you can see. We get the basic transform information, but then we get things like skybox information, background color, field of view. The inspector is going to be the settings for anything and everything that you select. The main work that you will do in Unity is going to be done both in the scene panel and the inspector panel. So expect to be going back and forth from scene to inspector again and again and again and again. The last panel to go over is the project panel. The project panel is where all of the files from the Unity project are going to be stored. And I don't just mean whatever you see in the scene or the hierarchy. Everything is going to be in the project panel. If you want to find its actual location, we can go ahead and go to our desktop here, and we can drag in. Let's see, we can find the lecture project folder right here, which is the folder that I place the lecture scene in. And here we can find the assets and packages folder. These two specific folders right here that are visible inside the project panel. If we open up the assets folder specifically, you will see that we have this scenes folder right here. If we open up the scenes, we can see that we have something called sample scene Unity. And if we open it up here, we can see we have the exact same thing, sample scene Unity and sample scene Unity meta. There are going to be meta files for everything that you find in your project inside the actual asset and inside your actual asset folder on your computer. Don't mess with these meta files. I wouldn't, not this early on. Just keep them around. This is just to show you that everything that you see here in your project panel does come from a real place inside your computer. Specifically, your assets folder is going to be the main place that we're going to be going back and forth on in terms of Unity and actual File Explorer. So those are the four basic panels. The project panel, you'll notice, has two tabs, project and console. Console has feedback for codes, for coding, debug stuff, and error messages to help you out. We don't need any of those right now, but that's where your debug stuff goes for actual scripting. And scene also has two tabs, but we will cover that later. So for now, let's go ahead and actually start populating our scene. Let's actually start adding some objects in, right? Let's go up to game object, and let's go to 3D object, and let's just add in a basic cube right here. There we go. Okay, so let's start exploring the art of navigating Unity. So good news, if you've been using Maya at all, then navigating Unity is exactly the same. Right now, I am holding down Alt on the keyboard. I am holding down the left mouse button on. I'm holding down the left mouse button, and I'm just, rotating the camera around. I can hold down the right mouse button, and I can zoom in and out. I can hold down the middle mouse button, and I can pan left to right, up and down. I can let go of the Alt button and just scroll the mouse wheel and just zoom in and out that way. With my cube selected, either through the scene or through the hierarchy, as you can see, I can just press F on my keyboard, and I can focus right in and center the viewport around my cube as such. So the good news, navigating in Unity is exactly the same as in Maya. So if you've been doing it in Maya at all, you will already have a head start on how to navigate within Unity. Speaking of things being identical to Maya, let's go over these arrows right here. This is our transform arrows, so we can go ahead and manipulate the green to move the cube up and down the y-axis, the blue for the z-axis, and the red for the x-axis. We can see that all of our movements that we're doing here are being recorded here in the inspector. We can also control the movements from the inspector. We can just type in numbers if we want, so I can just change this -1.3 to, I don't know, -2. push it that way, or I can go even further and go -10 and push it back really far. I can also hover my mouse over the X, Y, or Z and control the movement that way by just holding down the left mouse button and then just scrolling left and right to control the positioning that way. Again, just like in Maya, I can select one of these to move my object across 2 axes at once. And just like in Maya, not only do I have control over the positioning of my object, I also have control over the rotation and the scale of my object. I can go ahead and manually control those here from the inspector, or I can use my toolbar up here to switch to rotate or switch to scale, or again, if you're used to Maya, you can use the same hotkeys that you used in Maya to switch over to the rotate and scale. So I can press E for rotate, R for scale, W for transform, and Q for just regular selection. So let's go ahead and just mess around with it a little bit. Let's go ahead and just rotate this. Let's do some scaling, some basic scaling like that. Why not? And we can push this down maybe. There we go. We did some crazy stuff with the cube right there. Why not? There we go. You can see all those changes reflected here in the inspector. If for some reason you're not happy with these changes at all, you can go ahead and reset them. You can do it manually by just clicking on each setting here and just manually resetting them back to 0, or the faster way, you can just undo those with Control-Z, just like you could in Maya. The faster way, this transform component, and by the way, the inspector is made up of a series of components, of component settings. These are the transform component. This is the transform component here. We're going to go ahead and go to these 3 little dots here. We're going to click it, and you can see something called reset or reset property. So if we just want to reset the position on its own, or the rotation on its own, or the scaling on its own, we can reset one specific property, or we can just reset everything at once with this main reset button. So let's go ahead and test. Reset scale, reset just the scale back to its initial, but let's go ahead and just do reset everything to put the cube right back into its initial default positioning there. Wonderful. All right. Next thing I want to talk about the light. But in order to better talk about the light, we should probably add a plane. So let's go ahead and go back up to Game Object. Let's go to 3D Object. Let's add a plane. There we go. And let's go ahead and take our cube and make it so it's resting on the plane. So I want to make that 0.5. Again, you're working through the scene panel and the inspector panel, both together. That's the best way to work in Unity. There we go. That's pretty good. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the lighting that's in Unity. Real-time lighting. It's very powerful. Very, very. It's an excellent tool that gives game engines a distinct advantage over programs like Maya or anything else. It's the real-time lighting. So let's go ahead and select our lighting here. We can go ahead and see again. We have a whole bunch of settings we can mess with here in the inspector, including intensity, shadows, colors. Before that, though, I want to talk a little bit about the arrows that you can see for the lighting. First of all, you'll notice that unlike, say, the cube, these arrows are pointing off in a weird direction. So if I were to start manipulating the light here, just start moving it around, you will see that it's actually moving across all 3 axes at once, as opposed to just one, like with my cube or with my plane if I did it with my plane. Why is that? Well, the scene panel hides something called local right up here. You can see this little drop-down menu for local and global. Essentially, you are able to easily control if you are moving an object in the scene panel locally or globally. So if I were to select globally, you will see that now I have the regular movement controls that I had with the cube. Whereas locally, I have these weirder ones that give me some more distinct control that will be useful in certain scenarios. Essentially, what I'm saying is that you are going to want to switch back and forth between global and local movement as is necessary. So you have the option to do both at any time. So that is going to be a very, very powerful tool for you to start getting used to and understanding that it's right here, very easy for you to access at any time. So let's mess around with the light a little bit. Light, as you can see, by just moving it around a little bit, nothing is happening because the light, in this case, sunlight, directional light, aka sunlight, is controlled via rotation and not via positioning or scaling, for that matter. I could put on the scale tool, but nothing's going to happen. So let's go ahead and go to the rotate tool, and let's go ahead and just start playing around with the lighting a little bit. As you can see, rotating is going to affect the sunlight in the back there, and thus affect the whole scene. And we can just start creating something of our own here. We can reset the inspector values if we want to create something wholly interesting. Create a nice little sunset, sunrise scenario here. Or maybe we just want to make it midday by rotating directly down to the middle. There we go. Or maybe we want to make it night by rotating all the way up, like this. I think leaving it as such is going to be interesting. And again, the inspector gives us plenty of settings to play with, so we can play around with the color. We can make it something bolder with a nice little blue, not too blue, but just a little bit. We can play around with the intensity of the light if we want to make it much brighter or make it much darker. But I think 1 is going to be fine for now. We can also play around with the shadows, to make them hard shadows, to make them no shadows, or we can just stick with the basic soft shadows, which, you know, for this will be best for demo purposes. There we go. Next thing I want to cover, and I think it's going to be the last thing that we cover for this particular first video, because I've already been showing you quite a few basic things. I want to discuss a little bit the scene panel tab. So I mentioned before that project panel has multiple tabs, the project tab and the console tab. The scene panel also has 2 tabs, specifically the scene tab and the game tab. In order to properly talk about the game tab, let's go ahead and actually talk about the camera over here. When we select the camera, you will see here in the bottom right something called main camera. Maybe it will be called camera preview for you. Essentially, it is a preview of what you're going to see in the game tab. It is a preview of what you will see when you actually start to run the game that you're creating here in Engine. So let's see. We can actually show the game tab right now. You can see if I press Alt and the left mouse button, I'm not going to be able to have full control over the camera like I do in the scene tab. The game tab is not for work. The game tab is just to see what things are going to be like as soon as you start running the game. The scene tab here is for work. The game tab is just for a little preview of what your game is actually going to look like the instant you start. But in terms of actual work, you want to be in the scene tab at all times, basically, is what I'm saying. That said, let's get a better angle here. Let's get a nicer view here. So let's go ahead and move our camera in. Let's go ahead and move it over here, or maybe over here. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's rotate it a little bit using just the basic shortcuts from Maya. Just press E for rotate. Let's go like that. Let's maybe change our positioning to global so we can move up, back. And that is a pretty decent little view of our cube scene here. Maybe we can switch over to local and play with the camera a little bit more. That looks pretty good. All right, that looks pretty good. Maybe we can change our field of view here from 60 to 45. I don't know. Just to show you that you have access to play with these settings as you see fit. All right, so let's go ahead and actually finish this up by adding in some more objects. There's some more objects to add. Let's go ahead and add in, I don't know, a sphere. There we go. And actually, let's also make sure we can see our main camera preview this whole time. So let's go ahead and lock in our inspector settings here. There we go. locking in our inspector settings up here at this little lock allows us to make sure that every time we select something in Unity, the inspector will automatically and smartly update to the settings for the thing that we have selected. But if we want to lock in on the settings of just one specific object, we can just press this lock up here, and that way we can just we can just select other things to our leisure and not have to have the inspector constantly shift to different things every time. Make sure you unlock it once you're done with whatever you're doing. In this case, once I'm done setting up a nice little scene here. So we have a sphere there. I have a capsule. We can add this in. We can put that. Right there. Capsule is going to be really useful for third-person controllers and first-person controllers. Well, what am I saying? They're not useful for third-person controllers unless you're playing as a capsule character. They're very useful for first-person controllers. We can add a cylinder as well. We can make that floating, maybe. Maybe we can scale it out and make it weird. I don't know. Why not? There we go. That's a nice little basic scene. We go into our game view. Yeah, there we go. That's decent. All right. Last thing I want to talk about is how to actually run your games. At this point, you know, nothing's going to happen when we run our game, but we can still run it if we want to, and still actually, you know, we can still play and just get a nice still image. So if you want to actually run your game, you go up here to the play button, you click play, and whatever is in your game tab at the moment is going to be what plays. There you go. At this point, nothing's really happening because we don't have any scripts, we don't have any animations. Nothing's going to happen aside from the fact that we have all of these objects that we placed in our scene. But there they are. You can press escape, and then you can press play to exit out of the game mode. And that's it. That's all we have to cover. Oh, actually, one more thing I do want to make sure we discuss before we're all wrapped up for today is saving. So let's actually go ahead and go to File. And let's go to Save As. And let's make sure that we are in the Scenes folder. And this is going to lead to one last little discussion point. I'm going to name this game object scene. Game objects. Yeah, I'll just name it game objects scene. Why not? And we'll save. Okay. So the last thing I want to make sure I discuss is the fact that Unity is capable of holding more than one scene at a time. So right now I just saved and we have this scene that we created, the scene with all of the game objects. We also have something called sample scene, which is the original scene that we started with. So Unity is capable of saving and holding in multiple scenes. You are capable of going back and forth instantly whenever you want from one scene to the other. So more power to you. Unity is a very, very powerful game engine, very, very powerful program that once you know how to use, it is really going to benefit you moving forward. And these are the basic things that I wanted to show you for this first video. In our next video, we're going to give you some more power and actually give you the ability to import from other programs like Maya into Unity. So I will see you for that.